Well, we're going to start by review of a little bit. If you would take your review sheet, and it's a rather lengthy one, I think, and it's number 6, review number 6. The reason I put it review number 6 is because I didn't know where else to go. We've missed so many and we've dropped so many. So this is review number 6, and the next one will be review number 7. Now, Tom, can you hear me back there? Okay, I want to be sure I'm being heard. All right. Matching, changing the water to wine. F, John chapter 2. Healing the nobleman's son. J, John chapter 4. Restoration of the impotent man. A, John chapter 5. The raising of Lazarus. G, John chapter 11. Martha, C, she was the pots and pans woman. She was the one who served. Number 6, walk on the water. B, John chapter 6. Mary, E, Bible and devotional book. Mary is the worshiper. She's the learner at the feet of Jesus. 8, sight to the blind. D, John chapter 9, man born blind from birth. Number 9, H, Jesus loved Lazarus. He's the only one specified as being loved by Jesus Christ. Now, John talks about the disciple whom Jesus loved, and we believe he's talking about himself. But he specifically calls out Lazarus as the one Jesus loved. Number 10, loaves and fishes. B, John 6. B or I. B or I. There's 2 in John 6. Okay? Why Christ waited for 2 days before he went to Bethany. Number 1, he wanted to be sure that everyone knew that Jesus was dead, that Lazarus was dead. The indisputability of the death of Lazarus. The indisputability. Number 2, it makes the miracle even more impressive because it becomes the greatest miracle that Jesus does. Number 4, Christ chose. Number 3, Christ chose. There was no external pressure on him to do anything. Feeding of the 5,000, it was Andrew that said, "What is this among so many? What are you going to do about this? How are you going to do the miracle? Here's an opportunity." But in this case, there was no external pressure whatsoever. Number 4, and I think probably this is the most valid of all of the reasons. Delay did not dampen the tragedy. I'm sorry. Delay did not deepen the tragedy. It highlighted the victory. Waiting did not deepen the tragedy. It highlighted the victory. Those 4 things. Any of them need to be repeated? Okay. Number 3, resurrection and life. Resurrection assures new relation to God. New relation to God. resurrection to life becomes so rich it cannot die. Resurrection to life becomes so rich it cannot die. Number 3, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. If you had been here, my brother would not have died. Number 4, when life is a puzzle or a perplexing, when life is puzzling or perplexing, lean not to your own understanding. Lean not to your own understanding. And on the back side, there's 2. Number 5, you can relax in the company of good friends. You can relax in the company of good friends. Number 6, with the raising of Lazarus, the Jews became more violent. Any repeats on those? Okay. Now turn to John chapter 11, and I want to review the concept of the light. I felt like last time I might have gone through that a little more rapidly than I needed to, because it is so vitally important to everything else we need to know about chapters 11 and 12 in particular. Now in chapter 11, verses 9 and 10, chapter 11, verses 9 and 10, Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in a day? If any man walks in the day, or in the light, he stumbles not, because he sees the light of this world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbles, because there is no light in him. Now I want you to hear these 5 things and be sure that we get them into our notes, because it's so important in talking about the resurrection. Number 1, walking in the light involves, number 1, a commitment that light brings life. A commitment to life that brings light. Light that brings life. In the prologue of the gospel, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by Him. It goes on down to say, in Him was life, and the life was the light of the world. That's the beginning of the Gospel of John. The light is the life, or the life is the light of the world. And men prefer darkness to light because their deeds are evil, he tells us in chapter 3 of John's Gospel. So here we find this idea of a commitment. Light produces life. Number 2, there must be a continuing process of walking in the light, because once we have made that initial decision, number 1, that He is the light of the world and He gives us life, and number 2, in the light of that decision, we make all other decisions. In the light of that decision, we make all other decisions. So, a continuing, daily, consistent decision-making process. Now, that is so critical for us not only to learn for ourselves, but to teach our children, our grandchildren, that there must be a consistency in the decision-making process. You can't flip-flop on every issue that comes down the pike. There must be consistency on the part of the Christian life. Number 3, there is also not only the consistency in the decision-making, there is also the progression that the more I move toward the light, the more I become like the light. The more I can see, the more I can understand, the more I can put together. So there is a progression of the walk toward the light. We can become more conformed to the light. Number 4, in this progression, there develops a moral concern. In this progression, there develops a moral concern that enters into conflict with darkness. Now, if you don't believe that's true, you haven't turned on your television lately. There has to be a moral concern. As we walk in the light, we must oppose and we must counter culture, whatever that means. We must propose the moral issue that light gives us life, or life gives us light, when Jesus said, "I'm the light of the world." So here is an absolute essential moral quality. People who walk in the light do not steal what belongs to other people. People who walk in the light do not abuse other people. So that's the moral progression. Then the last thing, I think it's the last one, maybe there's 6 of them. That's the last one. The present condition of the kingdom within lets us know that the light is going to lead us even further into eternity. I've been listening to some of the pastor conference music tapes, and one of them happens to be a good quartet number. I have heaven in my heart. I have heaven in my heart. And as a result of having heaven in our heart, there offers us that hope of light and life to come forever and forever. Now, I want us to be sure that we get that concept of light and life, because it has to reflect in the resurrection, not only the resurrection of Lazarus from the dead, but we're going to come pretty quickly, well, not so quickly, we're going to come to the part where the resurrection of Jesus Christ becomes the absolute essential for the proof of the gospel. That becomes tremendously important. So, light and life. Now, Lazarus is alive again. He has been raised from the dead. Verses 28 through 37 is the story of Lazarus and the raising of Lazarus from the dead. I said this earlier, let me say it again. The ultimate involvement of life has to do with ultimate involvement with death. It is demonstrated in the realm of disease, nature, deformity, now death. Jesus has overcome all of these other things: disease, nature, deformity, death. Death, here it is. If death could not be defeated, then the other things didn't matter. If death could not be defeated, then the other things would not matter. Now, Lazarus comes out of the tomb, and Jesus says to the neighbors, to those around, loose him and let him go. He's not going to continue to live in the grave cloth. Loose him and let him go. I've somehow had that feelings about folks I know. They just ought to get loose and let it go. They ought to tell the story of what's happened to them, where they are in the midst of all of the conflict and confusion of life. Loose him and let him go. Unwrap him. Don't keep him bottled up. Unwrap him. But there's also in that unwrapping process that it's finally, Lazarus walks out and Lazarus is whole again. And he's living and breathing. He's not living in the grave cloth. He is living now just like he did before he died, if not even better than before he died. Now, I'm convinced one of the reasons Jesus wept is because he was calling Lazarus back from where he had been. Jesus knew what was on the other side. That's where he came from. And he knew that calling back Lazarus from the other side, he's going to call him back to this earth, which is not the best place of the two. The best place of the two is heaven. Now, there's adjustments to be made. I'm not going to, I said to someone this morning, I don't want to get morbid. I don't want to overstate the fact. But listen, folks, if I didn't know that Nancy was not in heaven, if I did not know she was there, if I was not sure of her commitment to Jesus Christ, I don't know how I could exist. I just don't know how I could exist. I don't know how I could even want to exist. Now, does that minimize the fact that I miss her? Every time I walk in the house, I miss her. Every time I leave the house, I miss her. Every time I sit down in my chair next to her chair, I miss her. That's the natural tendency of this life. But I know she would not want to come back even to the comfort of our home. I know she would not want to come back to the person that she lived with and loved for 65 years plus. I know that. I understand that. And this is what is happening to Lazarus. Jesus calls him back to that place of eternal joy. No more disease, no more conformity, no more death. And Jesus weeps. I think that's part of the weeping process. Part of the weeping process. Now, I want us to stop here, and I want to give you these 5 things. 5 things of what happened as a result of the raising of Lazarus. And then we're going to pick up and fit these back into these 5 things. These 5 things. Number 1, what happens as a result of the Lazarus experience? Chapter 11, verse 45. Many believe. Many believe. Many Jews, many enemies believe. Number 2, chapter 11, verses 47 to 53. Chapter 11, 47 to 53. And this is that speech of Caiaphas. Chapter 11, 47 to 53. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees, council, and said, "What do we? How are we going to handle this? For this man does many miracles." Now here they are. This is that paradox that I have cautioned you about and we've seen all the way through. How can they believe the Old Testament? How can they believe what they actually teach and preach? And then come to admit this man does miracles. And then plot to put him to death. This is that paradox. We'll see it all the way through. For this man does many miracles. If we let him alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans will come and take both our place and our nation. Okay? Then, and one of them named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, You don't know anything. How rude. You don't know anything. Now listen to his proposal. Listen to the proposal of Caiaphas. Now consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. One man should die for the people. Now, John is very quick in the next verse to say he wasn't talking about himself. Caiaphas was not offering himself to die for the people. He could have been, but he did not. Caiaphas. And he spake not of himself, but as the high priest. He prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation. For not that nation only, but should gather together in one of the children of God that is scattered abroad. Now, that's Caiaphas. Let me say 2 or 3 things about Caiaphas. Number one, he is a Sadducee. This was the favored group by the Romans. They have the privileged place, not the Pharisees, but the Sadducees. They were normally the more wealthy, the ones of high visibility. And so here he is, one of the Sadducees. And the Sadducees did not believe in the resurrection. Did not believe in any. And someone said that's why they were sad, you see, is that they did not believe in the resurrection. But here were the Sadducees, and here was Caiaphas, who was, by the way, the son-in-law of Annas, who had been high priest a number of years before. Caiaphas becomes high priest and still has influence on the life of Caiaphas, as we'll find out in the trials of Jesus. So here they are, Caiaphas, simply the Sadducee. Rome is going to come and take our nation away from us if we don't do something about this man. And it's better for him to die than the whole nation to die. Confirming what they'd already decided. He was a rude man, apparently. He had erupted to them to say, You don't know anything. Let me tell you what you need to know. You ever met that person? Yeah. You ever met that person? No matter how much you knew, they knew something more. I remember saying to one of them one time, and I should care. We must understand that when we come to the place that we have decisions to make, we have decisions to make. And they may not please everyone with the decision-making process, but they must be made. And so here is Caiaphas saying, we have a decision to make. Are we going to let Jesus live and go on doing his miracles, or are we going to give up a nation? The Romans will come and take away our nation. Well, it doesn't take long to realize that on the horns of that dilemma, who's going to win out? Doesn't take a very smart person to realize that. So here is Jesus, here is Caiaphas. Caiaphas also, he proposes that one man dies for the nation. He also does not understand what he is doing. Now, this boggles my mind. Now, here is the high priest. I mean, he is the muckety-muck. He is the spiritual leader of the Jews. Here he is. And he doesn't even realize that he is fulfilling the prophetic message of the Old Testament. He doesn't even realize it. The Old Testament has always told us in Zechariah chapter 7, chapter 9, that Jesus is going to die for the nation and the nations. And here he is prophesying. He doesn't even realize it as the religious leader of his day. The fulfillment of the Scripture. And then the last thing about him, his position in verse 53 is easy. From that day forth, they took counsel together to put him to death. And Jesus no more walked among the Jews. He got out of their way. Now, interestingly enough, a little later on, we're going to find that the council says, now, if he comes to the Passover and anybody sees him at the Passover, let us know. And let me tell you what a job that would be. William Barclay, in his little commentary, calculates, and Josephus confirms it in his writing. I looked it up this morning. That one of the ways they determined the size of the crowd is that there was one lamb for every 10 people. That's how they calculated it. Well, listen to this figure, and then listen to what he is saying he is going to do. He calculates that in one of the Passovers, a census was taken of how many lambs were used during Passover week. 256,000 plus lambs. Now you extrapolate that, and this is how Barclay came to the conclusion, how also Josephus came to the conclusion, 1 to 10. That means that at a Passover, as many as 2.5 million people could be in Jerusalem. 2.5, and they say, now if you see him, tell us. Well, listen, I don't know about you, but if I don't make, I was going to lunch with someone on a Sunday not long ago, and I said, now I need to know specifically where I need to meet you. I can't just look in the auditorium and say, there they are. So we set up a place where we were going to meet. 2.5 million people, if you see him, let us know. How many references do you suppose they had? Probably 2 million people saw him, or at least they thought they saw him. So here's the proposal that's going to come. Now, the crowd. Okay, let me get off that. That's number 2. They were going to put Christ to death to save the nation. Number 3, verses 54, chapter 11, 54 to 57. Jesus retires to a place of safety. He no longer walks among the Jews. And then in chapter 12, I want to mention just first 11 verses of chapter 12. Honor is given to Jesus. Honor is given to Jesus in the presence of his enemies. Now, apparently there were two anointings, one by Mary, the sister of Lazarus, and another by an unnamed woman. Matthew's gospel tells us about that. I think it's chapter 26. And apparently there was another banquet at the house of Simon the tanner, or Simon the leper. I thought I had that down, but I did not jot the passage. See if I can find it real fast. Well, I can't. I'm not going to. But it's in Matthew's gospel. I'm sorry, say that again. 6 through 13? Yes. Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper. So apparently there were two, because this woman is never named. In John's account, it's Mary that is named. Now, Mary breaks the box, the alabaster box of sparkling perfume, anoints the feet of Jesus, and some think also the head of Jesus. For me, that's a mute issue. She anoints the head of Jesus, the feet of Jesus, and then wipes it away with her hair. Now, I don't understand all of the symbolism of this, but I understand this much. She gave the very best she had to anoint the feet of Jesus. It was worth almost 1 year's wage for a common laborer. Almost 1 year's wage for a common laborer. And then she wiped his feet. And the glory of woman is her hair. She wiped his feet with her hair. Now, one commentator wanted to make the proposal that this was not done. Women did not use their hair in this way. And Mary was doing something that was absolutely out of the ordinary. Now, I don't know all of the symbolism, but I do know this. Mary was saying, I'm giving the very best I have because he has given to me the very best he has, which is his glory and his honor. He has given that to me, and whatever anyone else thinks about what I'm doing, it really doesn't matter. And who speaks up? Judas. Why didn't we sell that and give it to the poor? Now, John's tough on Judas. The others do not react the way John does. John says the reason Judas spoke up is because he kept the bag. He kept the money. He was the treasurer of the 12. And he apparently was a thief, according to John. He didn't care about the poor. It was just more money for him to pilfer, apparently. Here is John calling Judas what he is. He's a liar. He doesn't care about the poor. And he's a thief. He's taking the money. Pilfers from the bag. And so honor comes to the presence of Jesus in terms of Mary. That's number 4, 12, 1 through 8. 12, 9 through 11. There develops among the people greater crowds because now they will come not only to see Jesus, but they come to see Lazarus, the one resurrected from the dead. Now, what does that mean for the nation of Israel? What does that mean about the Roman? It simply means we're going to have to destroy the evidence. So they decide not only are we going to put Jesus to death, we're going to put Lazarus to death. Poor Lazarus. He's already been there one time. Poor Lazarus. They're going to put him to death again. Because they know. Now, get this. They know Lazarus was dead. And they know that Lazarus is now alive. So they know what happened between his death and his life was called what? A resurrection in which they did not believe. Well, if they didn't believe in the resurrection, why were they so taken away with the fact we're going to destroy the evidence? Well, the only way you can get rid of good evidence is by destruction. And if evidence is going to be against you, you need to destroy it as rapidly as you can. That's why immediately when a crime scene, they put the tape around so nobody will disturb the crime scene and disturb the evidence. So here they are on the horns of the dilemma again. This is the event that precipitated the death of Christ, and it is a sign of how the death of Christ is going to come out. They know that Lazarus has been resurrected. Isn't it an amazing thing how you can know something and never admit it? They know. They're going to destroy the evidence. Well, in chapter 12, verses 12 through 50, there is this triumphant note called the triumphant entry into Jerusalem. And we'll wait and look at that next time. This triumphant entry. Now remember, how many people might be in Jerusalem at this time? 2.5 million. This is no small entrance that he's going to make. Here's what happens. The crowd from Bethany, which is 2 miles away, the crowd from Bethany follows him into the city, watches him get on the donkey, and then the crowd from the city see him coming as well. And the two crowds meet. No telling how many people were in that triumphant entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. So this triumphant note that we're going to see. See if I missed anything that I wanted to be sure. Oh, this spikenard that Mary uses. The word is only used 2 times in the New Testament. One in Mark 14 and one here. Is the word pistikos. Pistis is faith. Pistikos. It is a strange word, the commentator said. It means reliable, genuine. It can mean liquid. It can mean a trade name. That was the trade name for the perfume. It could be the oil that was extracted from pistachio nuts. It's an interesting word. It's used only 2 times. So whatever it was, liquid, reliable, unique, genuine, all of those things involved in the anointing of Jesus in Bethany. All right, let's stop there since our time is gone. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your presence.